On ground, we have IIUM, we have Sunway on the panel, we have me, Chloe, and Heidi. Okay, if there's no further questions, I invite the Prime Minister to begin when ready.
Sorry, can you turn on the music, please?
Okay,
okay, thank you.
Just a moment. Okay. Can I? Oh, okay. Is the mic on? Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. It's important to note that there are three main issues and three main problems in today's debate, which is why we're debating it in the first place when it comes to urbanization. These problems firstly look like the erasure of culture, which leads to the abuse of indigenous communities, and looks like the pushes for liberalization when urbanization occurs. This is because these urbanization is going to most probably come from foreign investment through either investment from like China or the West. So it will lead to the indoctrination of pro-West ideologies into these developing countries. And thirdly, which is going to be discussed by Ainur later on how that damages the environment of the country in general. This is why side government takes the stance that developing countries should adopt economical policies that discourage for urbanization with two main outcomes. Firstly, the preservation of cultural lands and communities, as well as the protection of the environment in developing countries. So firstly, moving on to a few characterizations within today's motion. Firstly, what does these developing countries look like? We tell you on side government that they're more likely to be third world countries. That looks like, for example, Southeast Asian countries. It looks like Malaysia, that looks like Myanmar. Or even countries within the Middle East that are still developing, such as Iran and Iraq, or countries even in Africa that are considered to be developing countries. Secondly, moving on to my second characterization on what economical policies are likely to look like when they're discouraging urbanization, we tell you that there are probably going to be more stringent laws on taxation on foreign investment. That looks like, for example, if China is currently investing in making roads in Malaysia, they're going to increase taxation on them in order to allow them to go through with these investments. And thirdly, what does urbanization look like? We tell you it looks like the development of cities through the selling of land within these developing countries for foreign investment in order to formulate this urbanization. Moving on to a preemption on what side opposition might try to say, we're going to tell you that although urbanization might be helpful in increasing job opportunities for these developing countries, which is incredibly needed for these communities, and it's something we agree on as well inside government, we tell you that, one, these job opportunities are less likely to be accessible for everyone because they're going to be having a few categories as to what people they're allowing to have these job opportunities, and only the people who come from privileged background in regards to education, who got good universities degrees, are able to get the high-paying job enough to give the advantage, the large advantage that the opposition might try to push. And secondly, we tell you that when they are able to get these jobs, if they're not the high-paying ones, and the more commonly known ones then will be the less-paying ones, which are not going to help in the development of these countries, because these pro-West Western investment is more likely going to look at these developing country individuals as cheap labor for their investment. Moving on firstly to my first argument, not yet, on how urbanization leads to the erasure of culture. It is important to acknowledge that in the context of today's motion, urbanization is happening in developing countries. So they will require foreign funding, which makes them incredibly dependent on trying to abet to the investor countries' views, and will probably seek them out, as I mentioned earlier, from either China or the West. Each of these countries is in constant battle over the control over the global economy, so it will make its way to become a new form of colonization of these developing nations, which is going to harm how these countries, going to incredibly harm the international standing of these countries, and how this dependency on foreign investment for the growing economy becomes incredibly dangerous for these developing countries, because when these investors decide to pull out, for example, because they disagree with something that developing country decided to do, it was heavily going to impact and plunge the economy of these developing countries. And secondly, that these foreign investors can threaten to pull out of their investment and not follow through with them if the decision of these developing countries later on disagrees with them in an international context, an international context. APR.
Is McDonald's opening in Malaysia colonialism?
Not necessarily, but when we're looking at it from a larger scale, I think it's incredibly important to understand the harm of other forms of urbanization that are outside of just McDonald's and fast food chains in general. Moving on to my second argument as to how urbanization leads to the indoctrination of liberal views. If urbanization was to happen in developing countries, such as in the Middle East, as I mentioned earlier, with Iran and Iraq, from the West or China, I think it's already clear enough that China and the West already show time and time again that they have anti-Muslim ideologies. This looks like, for example, France having the hijab ban, or China's camps and how they treat Uyghur Muslims within them. So when these countries are going to be when these countries are the ones that are funding the urbanization of these developing countries, they will push for these countries, they will push for their ideologies and their beliefs of like a wide form of feminism, or to run away from this Islamic oppression, and push for governments to apply such policies when it comes to the white savior mentality that they're trying to apply, and for all those reasons support side government.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I invite the leader of the opposition.
Okay. Starting my speech in 3. Can I take this out? It's okay. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. From our side, we support a world where developing countries adopting economic policies encouraging urbanization. First of all, I'm gonna add on what has been missed out by the government. So firstly, we need to know how these people living in developing countries people look like. So majority of these people have low income and they are living in a rural area with less globalization. And the second thing, the people here have lower education, which means that they only have education maybe till the secondary stage. They don't get to have chance to go into a university or college because these places in developing countries usually don't have this higher education institution. And thirdly is that these people have usually have jobs with no regulated income. So usually they are involved in farming, fishing, and this kind of job which doesn't pay them regular income. And the fourth thing is that these people are usually low-skilled workers, which because they have lesser education, so there's less likely they can pursue in jobs which require high skill. And I want to rebut to what government have said just now regarding the preservation of culture. This is not true because, like I framed just now, these people are having low income. So average people living here actually care more about standard of living, care more about what they can bring to the table at dinner because the income is highly unregulated. So when there's thunderstorm, they cannot go fishing and they cannot earn money. So these people actually don't care the culture that much, but they actually care more about whether they can get job opportunities that can provide them regular income. And the government also mentioned about depending on investor country is not bad, as this country will colonize the country, but it is unlikely true because these companies, like my teammate have mentioned just now, McDonald's, it's unlikely for a company coming in to have large hold of the country's investment until they can colonize and influence our country's policy or how our country works. So what they come up with is unlikely true. And from our work, we support urbanization and how this urbanization look like. So from our side, right, government will give subsidies and grants to encourage more people to move in and encourage the factories or companies to come into the country in order to build their factories or build their office by giving them tax exemption or maybe releasing license more easily for companies to actually build their companies or build their buildings in these places. So so bringing in my first argument, which is the people on the ground, which is the middle class, and the low class income group or the middle class income group is the most benefited group of people from urbanization. So why is this true? So like I mentioned just now, these people have low education. So when you promote urbanization, right, the factories, the educational institution will move in because of the lower price. And firstly, I'm going to talk about job opportunities. So factories, when there is tax exemption, the big countries are more likely to come into this area to build their factories because it's cheaper, and this is very good as it can provide job opportunities for many people in the rural area. And opposition come up with the fact that, oh, they need high skill in order to pursue in this career, but it's not true actually. So for most of the country, they actually require they don't require that much of skills, and so these workers can actually work there. And the better thing compared to their side is that these factories actually provide them a regulated income as compared to them doing fishing or farming, which is highly unstable job. And the second thing here is that the benefit of education is also benefit of urbanization is that it can bring educational institution into this country. And why is this good? So this institution can help to increase the level of education of these people in the rural area, which is actually extremely good because, like I said just now, they have lesser education, so they cannot pursue in high skill work. So when they have education, they get to have a lot of skills which can help them to involve in work that require more skill, and in the long run they can pursue in this job which can provide more income, which can increase their standard of living. And this is very increase their standard of living, and this is beneficial in the long run because when the overall people, average people receive more education, these people can help to change this rural area into a better place. And the opposition might come up with problems like corruption because of this policy, but it isn't true because of the media status and the increase in the foreign investment, which actually act as a check and balance. And the higher scrutiny of media watching and the foreign investment, there is a lesser chance that the government actually do corruption, and they want to do better in order to attract more foreign investment to come into our country to invest in order to help the place to get better. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
I'm not going to use the mic because I feel like my voice is way too loud for it. Do you mind? Okay. Yeah. I don't think Bryan noticed that the standard of living and whatever definition of what a country looks, a developing country looks like, and what it values against a Western world is so much different that they fail to see that those standard of living thing is simply unimportant, right? Bryan said that these people don't have a standard income. Now they're farmers and they're fishermen, so they don't have a standard income, and having a small amount, low level of standard income is way better than our side. We tell you why that is simply not true, right? Because for 3 reasons. First of all, people in developing country has a lower cost of living, right? Meaning that they don't need such a big amount of money for them to sustain their daily lives. Number 2 is that they have different values in which that they live simple, right? They don't care the fact that they don't have McDonald's on the table for that night. As long as they have some food, it is better for them because it is more simple. It's not like they care like what wants you to believe, right? Also, number 3, standard of living is very, by what they define, is very West-centric, right? Because developing countries value different things and they probably don't care anyways. Also, Elo also said something about job opportunities and how these foreign corporations are going to come in and somehow provide job opportunities. We can see that with the mainland China company that built the SUKE highway, and how most of the people that they employ there, they bring it from China anyway. So this whole job opportunities is merely a facade, because in the end they are still going to take people from their respective countries to give them these high positions or even low positions as well, because you can see it on the construction sites as well, right? Moving on to my 2 arguments is my speech today, right? First, on how preserving your country is better for the economic development, and second, on why preservation of the environment is necessary in today's world. First argument on how preserving your country is better for the economic development. First level of analysis on why this is true, right? Because there are other forms of economic income in this world. For example, there's ecotourism. You can see countries that focus on tourism, like Bora Bora with their resorts, or even locally, right, like Pulau Pangko, Tioman, or Pahang National Park, where they focus on ecotourism instead. This ecotourism is very good. Why? Because it causes minimal damage to the environment, and nowadays with the current modernization and current awareness for the environment, there's so much stringent preservation rules. You cannot wear sunscreen where you go diving, or you cannot feed the fish in the sea because it might change their ecosystem. There are laws in place because of the awareness that it is prevalent today. And why this is also good, because you can showcase your culture. You can, like my PM said, how this is important, right? You can showcase your culture, you can showcase your environment without compromising or letting go all of these things, right? Indigenous people can showcase their culture without you taking away their land just because of you want to build another condo on their land, right? You can give them job opportunities, and at the same time you can give them culture. They can still preserve their culture, which is still another form of standard income, like wants to push earlier, right, when you use ecotourism later. A second level of analysis on why this is good, because this creates sustainable income for the country. It is important to note that the land, labor, capital, just resources around the world, is something that's unsustainable. You use it once, you won't get it again. It means that it is irreversible, right? So urbanization can start once these resources run out, right? And even if one of the resources run out, it can prevent development as a whole. For example, it is not in effect yet, but if you look at South Korea, they are facing problems with their labor, right? Their birth rate is falling, and their country is concerned because it's gonna prevent for further development in the future, because there's no labor for them to work in the workforce in the first place, right? So resources are scarce. Once you use it, you cannot go back on it, right? But on our side, when I say that ecotourism, it's like you don't need to use it, or even if there is some sort of damage, is very minimal as compared to theirs. They are also, when they say like they want foreign investment, right? Their side wanting urbanization gives chances to these Western countries or bigger, more powerful countries that are having problems to access this land labor capital to access ours instead, right? This is like cheap labor where they exploit you and put you in sweatshops, like in Bangladesh later. In Bangladesh, where they cannot make like proper livings, like 10 cents per hour is still not livable. Might as well have like the 20 ringgit per day, but you still can put food on the table rather than 10 cents per hour. Or like land resources, like what British did to Malaysia when they scoured, when they took away our tin and rubber. Or like diamonds, right? How Australia supplies diamonds to China, and give, whether or not you give into foreign investment or not, even if you encourage urbanization locally, it will still harm the amount of resources available, right? Third level, before 6.
Wait, your extension under environment is South Korea having a lack of manpower.
Can you repeat again?
Your analysis for your environmental argument is saying that South Korea has a lack of manpower.
Not currently. Not currently. I told you it has not taken effect right now, but there's a lower amount of birth rate, meaning it's going to affect them in the future. That's why they still scour up. That's why they still have Samsung in Malaysia, because they don't have enough labor there. Third level of analysis on why this is important is because it creates the independent development, right? This is pretty much intuitive. You don't have to rely on your country on you don't have to rely economically on their country for your development of your country. So it is not affected, given that something bad happened to their country. Second argument, why preservation of environment is necessary. Why is this true? Currently, preservation of environment currently in developing countries are pretty much untouched, or even if it's touched, it's only touched in like capital, like maybe KL or Addis Ababa, right? So there is most of the parts of other countries is still untouched, meaning that you can still have the chance to preserve these things. Like I previously said, it is important to note that once you use... Never mind. I rest my case.
So we can move the mic. Should be okay, right?
I'll start in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, 3 points coming out from Gov, right, and how we take them on. Gov says culture and environment. I'm not sure they got the wrong notion, but I don't think that's the main point of today's debate. I'm just going to explain to you why it's not true and it doesn't matter. First of all, culture. You think that Western companies are going to come to developing countries and cause colonialism, and how that's bad. You don't even explain why it's bad actually, but we tell you a few reasons why their influence isn't going to be as large as you think. First of all, backlash, right? Because if a company comes into a country and tries to change the way they live, for example, if a Western company comes into Malaysia and promotes Western ideas, they're probably going to face backlash from consumers. Backlash from consumers means that their businesses probably isn't going to do well, boycotts are going to happen, their investments are going to be wasted, the company's going to be hurt. But even then, I think that these companies are more likely going to try to adapt to the market instead. They're going to try to adapt to our culture and our way of life so that they can promote their products and their services to us, right? Therefore, they can earn more profit from us. I don't think that's that much of an issue. However, even then, I think that the government holds their licenses coming into this country to do business. So they do something really offensive, they're going to get like the same treatment as the KK Mart stocks and they're going to be kicked out of the country or something. We've heard that that's probably really damaging for these companies to get their business completely kicked out, and it's a waste of capital for them. So I don't think that they're likely to try to do this. Fourth thing, right? I think that even then, if this Western ideology thing comes in the developing country, unless your whole country is really that religious and that cultural to the point where they're not going to accept anything, I don't think that's true, by the way. People are more likely to accept these companies because of the novelty factor, right? Think about how family Mart came to Malaysia and a bunch of people queued up even though now it's worth nothing. the hype isn't there anymore. I think that this novelty factor of a new business or a new industry coming later at 5 is probably going to attract even more people, and therefore the culture thing doesn't really hurt, right? The fifth thing I want to pose it to you is that culture doesn't really matter to people in this circumstance because you're not directly infiltrating into their way of life, you're not stopping them from practicing religion, for example, you're not interrupting their way of life, and therefore it's not really that much of an issue. But second rebuttal here, right? Environment. I think that DPM does a very weird thing by taking on ecotourism burden because they have to prove how ecotourism actually, one, can protect the environment, two, can lead to the same benefits as urbanization, and three, can actually work, right? I think that ecotourism, one, doesn't actually protect the environment, which is to invite tourists in the reserved area of forest, but let's take their burden. So even if ecotourism works, we can have two things. One, a developed country probably has nature reserves or some protected areas, so they're not going to sacrifice, Brazil's probably not going to sacrifice, for example, the Amazon forest to build a shopping mall right there in the middle. And second thing, environment probably doesn't matter to people for all the metrics that my PM mentions, that a standard person's quality of life is probably going to matter more than the environment and culture to them because it doesn't directly impact their way of life, right? So I think the most important clash in today's debate isn't culture and environment, but rather the standard of living. What my PM does really well in this debate is that he proves to you a simple process of how urbanization leads to even, in the very worst case, marginal benefits in standard of life. To rebut to what PM and DPM have been pushing the whole time, what income won't be that low and won't be that damaging for people on the ground? First of all, we have our government regulations. If governments hold the licenses to a country entering their own country, to a company entering their own country and doing business, it's very likely that they're going to set stringent regulations to ensure one, protectionism, so that their own labor, their own manpower doesn't get abused. And two, I think that even in the very worst case, where your own countrymen get like the lesser paying jobs, it's probably going to be marginally higher than what they're earning right now, and therefore it's going to offer them more choice and a better standard of life, right? With these companies naturally going to attract more manpower, especially when they're starting out in a new country in the process of urbanization, so naturally they're definitely going to pay more. I think the third thing that they want to do is attract people to urbanized areas, right? And therefore, even if the price of goods and services in the urbanized areas increase, they'll probably pay even more for people to be attracted to these areas, and therefore, I don't think that the income being that low is an actual thing. But the fourth thing, right, I think that your extreme case of paying 10 cents per hour to workers is a very extreme case and it seems similar to human trafficking rather than working in a company. The fifth thing, right, I think that more talented people in the country actually are going to come to that urbanized area and get higher paying jobs. I'm going to flip that thing on you and say that, first of all, it's unlikely that only the higher paying and more skilled jobs are going to go to foreigners. For the reason being, it's simply cost inefficient to hire all your own countrymen to go to another country, to have to pay them more, to have to pay them more benefits, simply to just work there, right? It's much more efficient to hire locally. And second, I don't think it really matters, because in the end, even if they get marginal benefits from the lower paying jobs, as you call it, I think that people on the ground still benefit. I think that's something that's been proved by my PM, and I'm going to impact it, right? He proves to you some very simple things. One, how the process of urbanization happens. Two, why people actually encourage urbanization. And three, why standard of living matters, right? He proves to you standard of living matters because one, rural area people, even though they like a simple way of life, as DPM says, they probably still have aspirations and natural inclinations to continue upgrading their standard of life. As my PM suggested, that's things like, I'll take you later, that's things like going to university, for example, or like having a better house, or not doing jobs that are labourers and hiring for them, right? Before that, right?
Why do your side assume that they have a bad quality of life? Given that they are satisfied with their life, it shouldn't matter if they like their life anyways.
It's the same reason why, even though we're 100 ringgit in our pocket, we still think we're poor. It's because of the human's natural inclination to try to upgrade their standard of life, the human's natural inclination to try to improve their standard of living, right? So unless you can suggest that even a well-off fisherman who can live comfortably in his kampung house won't want to do more, won't want to send his children to school, won't want to achieve more in life, then I think that you have a really heavy burden, and maybe that's a good thing. Few impacts of what Bryan's case is, right? First of all, I think that it's going to lead to a higher living standard for people for all the reasons mentioned. But second, I think this gives consumers more choice inside the country, and that's important for the developing country for two reasons, right? One, because the government will probably want to encourage more choices and more consumption options for people in their country, insofar as they get more benefit and more economic utility with their income. They are more likely to spend, and therefore that's beneficial for the country's economy. But secondly, I think people will be happier when they get more options to spend on, naturally leading to utility. A second impact that is foreign investment, which is not going to flip that foreign investment argument back on Gulf. To tell you that foreign investment is actually good for a company for a few reasons. Right? One, increased value of currency, which means that when a company puts in more money towards your country, your currency value is naturally going to increase. Therefore, this leads to lower price of imports, probably more power towards the country due to a higher currency, and actually see this as a better impact for the developing country as a whole in order to progress up the social hierarchy of countries or whatever you call it, right? I think that the way here is quite simple. I think that even a natural human would be inclined to think that their standard of life is much more important than their culture and environment. But even if someone really cares about their culture and environment, I think that the massive scale that impacts people on the ground in these developing countries, a majority of whom are poor or middle class, and the scope that we impact them to in the sense where we give them jobs, we give them more choices, and that influences much more of their lives than culture or religion. I think that government needs to respond to which is the most important clash in this debate and start engaging with all on this debate. Otherwise, I think it's going to fall. Thank you.
I think we definitely of the opposition and try to talk to it.
It's calling. Can you guys hear me without the mic? Is this okay? Okay. So, I'll get just started in... Oh, sorry, 1 second. All right, I'll get started in 3, 2, 1. The issues of this debate is that in these countries, there are now going to be colonization of these foreign investors, as well as erasure of the culture that has been that needs to be preserved in order for the economic development to be beneficial to the people that are living within these developing countries. All right, starting off with a couple of refutations. The first thing that they said that urbanization will create more job opportunities and will be beneficial for the people that have are living in these third world countries because they have very low education, right? They're saying that now that people will have access to higher paying jobs, right? And this is not true because these jobs are only going to be accessible to the people that are privileged, right? So poor people will be stuck with lower paying jobs, right? Now, jobs that are more lower paying, these are the ones that are going to be accessible to them, right? So they do not have access to these high paying jobs. And this is completely bad because if they're in part of these, if they're living in these urbanized places, then they will not be able to it will not be sufficient enough for them to it won't be up to the standard of living, so it will be very hard for them to get by. Even if they do get a good job, right, there will be an unbalance between education within the workplace, right? And this not only causes this causes a bad representation of the people that were underprivileged, right? Because they didn't have access to these educations. Now that they're in this workplace and unable to do what the people that had the education were able to do, they will not be able to represent themselves in what they are actually good at, right? And this is ends up creating a very unhealthy and stressful work environment for these people. So now that there's this is going to be very detrimental to the mental health of the people working in the place because they're unable to get along due to the difference of social classes and whatever. And because of that, this trickles down to like the family lives, right? Now people are not only do we have people that are not able to provide for these families, but they're properly, but now the family life at home is also just as bad as their work life in these urbanized communities, right? On our side, people continue to live preserving the traditions and profiting off of it, right? They don't have to be working on these high-paying jobs in order for them to continue to make money. If they continue to preserve the traditions and they profit off of that, then they're going to be able to make money according to how their economic standing is developing. So there's no chance of them having a different standard of life, which they are not able to pay for, right? And this is also preventing the social classes of the difference of social classes within the workplace. So there's no chance for unhealthy work environment. And this overall, we have happier families due to a good work environment as well as good funding. Right? So at their best, people are getting jobs, but in return, they're having an unhappy life due to the fact that they can't provide for themselves or their family, right? But on our side, right, we have people just living within the culture and being able to profit from it. All right. Yes, POI.
Yeah, if you earn less in the urbanized area than your own hometown, why would you go to the urbanized area to work in the first place?
Yeah, you guys are trying to get people to go into urbanized countries. I don't understand why. Right? These people already have their traditions. I don't know why they'll be incentivized to go in. You guys said that in order for them to get incentivized to go into these places, right? You guys are going to give them, tax exemptions, right? So this tax exempt, and you guys are going to encourage people to move in by giving them tax exemption, and this will apparently this will incentivize people to move in. This is untrue because where is this funding coming from, right? Urbanization already costs a lot of money. So when this money is being and when you are also like trying to get these people to move into these places, then you are not profiting off of the urbanization, but you're actually losing more money. Not because you are paying these people to go into these places. Government doesn't have the capacity to pay a large influx of people that are going to move in because of the incentives that they will be receiving. So this is not very realistic on a side opposition, and it just doesn't make sense. Right. A couple of things that opposition mentioned that didn't really make sense. Right. One said they said that they said something about low price. Right. What part of urbanization tells you things are going to be low price? Right. Because the thing urbanization is very costly. Therefore, we are wanting foreign investment. Right. And then the cost of living is going to be a lot more higher. Right. So there's no incentive to move in. Right. And what did DPM say? Something about human trafficking. I don't understand why this is why you are turning the concept into human trafficking when it's something that's very true. That's something that happens. This is human exploitation of these workers that are trying to make a living. Right? You're exploiting these humans. You're not. I don't understand where trafficking came from. Okay, so on a side government, we are able to provide a preservation of we are able to provide preservation of these traditions as well as being able to profit from it. And we don't have the issue of different standard of a standard of living that they cannot live up to because they are developing because the jobs that they already have are developing with the economical development. The foreign investment, right? The foreign investment is not something that we need in order to do that. And they said something about, they said foreign investment will have checks and balances, but this depends on whatever effects that these foreign investments do have on these developing countries. They will be very irreversible, right? So some of these investments, it could be issues with corruption as well as urbanization corps. They will find ways to exploit these laws and be able and try to squeeze away from whatever they are trying to do to these countries, right? This is the impact of the colonization that these foreign investments will have. Opposition does not prove that these foreign investment companies will not be incentivized to use these traditions to their advantage rather than having the people that are already living there profiting from it. And therefore, I rest my case. Government takes win. Thank you.
The phone.
That's not all. It's the recording. It's the recording.
Voice recording. It's the voice recording thingy.
Oh.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I did not know that.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think state government is being very blindsided to the fact that the increased living standards are actually on our side have given much more benefits to what they claim to have on their side. First, they talk about the initiation of culture and the abuse of indigenous communities and indoctrination of Western cultures into these places. Do you realize that these are Western and foreign investors which have high reputations in the part of the world? That's why they go around investing in these rural areas with lower demographic of people. Now, when they have these kind of images, that would look like they would have to be accountable towards the media that portrays their own image. So what does that mean? That means that when they start to invest in other places, they would more likely to be published in business magazines or even come in the newspapers or even the news, which means that they are looked because they want that image anyways. They want the image where they are investing and helping lower demographic people, which offers more job opportunities, which attract more investors into their own company. So that means that they would have to take care of their reputation. Now, what does that mean when they have to remove, or what happens when they remove indigenous community or separate them from their own culture? That would look like more people to boycotting, more people to pulling out investments from their companies, because they have to take care of their own image itself. So that is why they're less likely to actually have these kind of things. And secondly, your side acts as if, or government acts as if these investors are going to come in like how it happened 30, 40 years ago, where in Australia, the whites came in and they start removing indigenous people from their own lands, and then now they act as if these people cannot practice their culture anymore. I don't think that is something that's going to happen in today's world. Number one, again, because these are countries which already have governments and already have regulated licenses or rules towards these foreign industries that are coming in. So when you have such regulations, and once you go against, then they can just pull out their license and ban them from everything else. And not just that, when you pull them out, then the image of these foreign companies will be tarnished as well, because pulling out someone's culture is going against their own human right, or removing their own identity from their own place. That is less likely to happen. If you can look at us, just because a French company invests in Malaysia or in a Muslim country, that does not mean that this French company is going to stop people from wearing a hijab in the Muslim company. Because if such things exist, the French company wouldn't even invest in that country in the first place, due to the fact that they know that they would not get any profit from it. Secondly, we can see if in Malaysia, like if McDonald's is rejected, if McDonald's is such of coming to our country to invest in us, it doesn't mean that Malaysians are going to end up having to conform to what McDonald's would sell in America. If McDonald's in America sells pork burgers, no, it's not going to be like that. There's nasi lemak in McDonald's now. What I'm trying to say is that these people are going to be trying to fit into the culture here so that they get more investors and more interest of the public themselves to gain their own profit. At the same time, they would have to do research and development to fit into those demographics. Yes, your POI.
How would urbanization from Western countries impact the local businesses?
Okay, I'll come into that point. My second speaker have already elaborated on that point, but I'm going to use your point where you said that you get less likely to get these jobs, because then these people these jobs would go to higher skilled people anyways. We tell you that these are people that come into these rural areas or less developed areas, such as factory workers, and opening up shops that would look like shops like KK or something else like that. And you don't really need that kind of high skill to start with. These are factory jobs that, maybe you just have to screw on caps onto bottles. And when I mean screw on caps on bottles, that means that these companies would have to comply with government agencies or government rules to pay the minimum wage. Now, why is this important? Minimum wage is much better than the life you are proposing in your side. Your side thinks that simple life means happy life. But realize that most of these fishermen that live a happy life often push their children to get more education and to go into the cities. because they believe that these cities or these urban developments have the potential to offer their child better lives. If your case was true, most fishermen would actually want their children to be fishermen, and most farmers would want their children to be farmers. But no, they realize that this life is hard, and for them it's much more burdening. And if their children had better education opportunities and they can go out there and earn a better life, they would want their children to do that, which is why they are pushing for education. Now, why we are saying this investment is good, rejected. When they come in and there's more development, that means more education. What does more education mean? That means that more people will be able, number one, let's just talk about families. If Abu is a fisherman and he has a family, now there is a foreign investor that comes into his kampong or whatever, right? He builds up a factory. Now Abu does not have to fish anymore. In fact, he can go into these companies and earn a minimum living wage, let's say 1,500 a month, as compared to having as compared to having a regulated amount. What does that mean? At least now he's able to put on food on his table, knowing that every day his child would have an opportunity to eat every single day. And number two, his child will actually have more chance into education because of the fact that his child no longer has to stop education after high school to support his family the same way his dad did, but also have a chance to complete his education and continue his education in university and so on, because his father probably has better resources. Now, you're talking about next. You talk about how they have a lower cost of living, and why. And your side argues, why would they push their kids to go to cities, etc. And your response is because people our response towards why their kids would go into cities were because we get a better life. Better living of life. When I mean better living of life standards, we're talking about increased amount of education, and also just living a better life in terms of more money on their tables, so that they can have better generations in the future and an easier life to deal with. Your response is because these people often move out of their kampongs to go to other factories outside in the city, is because we are giving them tax exemptions. But isn't that better anyways? Because these people on the ground are living better lives anyways compared to what they are used to living, and not being able to have to earn enough money for their families, which are better on our side. You are talking about next. You also talk about how these people are going to be earning are much more susceptible to abuse or earning very low incomes. But we tell you that's, even though that happens, that will be less likely to happen. Number one, again, of their reputation. Number two, we're talking about even if they have such low incomes, that will be better than actually earning something that is much less on your side, because these people, again, they don't have the resources nor the stability in their jobs exist. I mean, it's simple to understand that fishermen will have to stop fishing when it's monsoon season. So how are they going to deal with the lack of funds for their family in the first place? What we can say is that even on a ground where they're earning much less, they actually have some amount of income which are coming to them, which is an increase in lifestyle anyways. It is an increase in life standards anyways. So this is why we prove that our side, even if they have to sacrifice some amount of moving out of their family, is something that, or moving out of the kampongs, is something that is going to increase their life anyways. Now, to sum up, I would just like to say that our side has proven of why it's so important that even with urbanization, these people have a chance of living a better life, which they have always wanted anyways in the past. And your side fails to recognize that even with these simplicities, that number one, the culture is not going to be robbed because of their reputation, and number two, your side believes that that even if these people continue to move into urbanization countries, it would basically give them less likely to have better jobs, or they would not be able to get those jobs because they don't have the skills. I think our side has actually killed all of those points, and our side is proud to oppose. Thank you very much.
I'll start in 3, 2, 1.
Here's how I'm going to structure my reply. First of all, some general feedback. Second, the verdict. And third of all, the clashes and how as well each one of them. First, general feedback for Gulf, right? First of all, you need to impact your metrics when it comes to the debate. Meaning, if you want to impact how culture and environment is important in this debate instead of standard living, you need to give reasons why. Presumably, on the other hand, has given you plenty of reasons why standard of life is the most important metric and the most important question in this debate. We have to give reasons such as one, impacts the physical welfare of people on the ground. Two, an average person probably cares more about money than the culture or the environment. And three, it's more proximate in people's lives, right? So I think, based on this metric alone, the verdict should simply go to op, but here I'm going to explain why on each clash op has won, right? First of all, standard of living, which I think is the most important clash in this debate as proven by op. We have already clearly mechanized the process to you to show how, one, as urbanization happens, people get more jobs. Yes, certainly they're not jobs like being a CEO or being like the CFO of a company. Sure, but being a manager of a shopping mall, for example, or being a manager of a shop lot will probably give you much more earning than your jobs that require you to kais pagi makan pagi. We tell you that being a fisherman or a farmer would probably lead to much worse living conditions for you than working in a shop lot. We also prove that all humans have a natural inclination to want to improve their standard of living. Therefore, urbanization is a process that's likely to happen, right? I think Gau's flimsy rebuttal to this is that people are worse paid in urbanized areas, which is literally counterintuitive because outside have already proven to you, if people get more benefits from moving to urbanized areas, then they are going to move and naturally they're better off. If they get worse benefits, then they're not going to move, then urbanization's a failure. So naturally, if the government and companies want to make urbanization a success, they're naturally going to pay these people higher, have these people have a better standard of life, so that they move over to urbanized areas and make their companies a success, right? I think on this side, Gao hasn't offered much, apart from a very counterintuitive response, and therefore I think the win for this clash automatically goes to all. But let's take on the next metric of government, right? Culture. Gao says culture is important because we want to prevent colonialism. Literally no impact on why colonialism is bad. Colonialism is bad. No impact on how McDonald's actually causes everyone in Malaysia to have some love for the culture of McDonald's. If that happened, then after eating McDonald's, I'll be wearing a red and white and yellow suit standing in front of you debating today. We have shown you how the impact is negligible on people, and in the very best case for all, people actually accept this new culture and this novelty factor causes urbanization to become even more of a success. If it goes in the very worst case, we tell that there's probably so many mitigations through like government regulations and like consumer interests that probably prevent that from happening. Third question on a more irrelevant metric suggested by Gulf, the environment. They don't exactly mechanize how urbanization hurts the environment apart from cut tree, build shopping mall. And their mitigation for environment is that they have ecotourism. But first of all, they can't prove that ecotourism provides the same benefits as urbanization. Second, they don't exactly answer how ecotourism is actually the solution. Because if you say you want to protect the seas by letting a bunch of tourists swim inside the seas and throw rubbish all over the forest and whatever you think that's protecting the environment and giving people jobs, I'm going to tell you that that's probably not true. It's even more counterintuitive and contradictory to Gau's push about culture when you're allowing tourists to access your less accessible areas in your country for tourism, right? I think that's probably contradictory on Gau's side. Overall, I think OP has a clear path of victory in this debate. We show you how standard of life is improved, and I think that's the main metric we should weigh. I don't see any obvious benefit coming out from Gulf, apart from that POI that finally suggested that they were on the right case, but you can't create new material after WIP. So with all that, I think OP has won today. Thank you.
Alright, thank you. Opposition slide speaker, slide the government.
I think their side is very disengaged. I can start again. It's okay. It's okay, it's okay. I think their side is very disengaging and uncharitable to our benefits. We have already mentioned you so many benefits that we get on our side, and I'm going to show you in my reply speech. Right? 2 questions that happen in this debate: who sustains better quality of life, and who can protect the environment better? Who sustains better quality of life? Right? They said urbanization. Urbanization has education. Has education, get a job. Or foreign investment. Foreign investment, get a job. They also said like, oh, that's why people are incentivized to move in to urban areas, because urban areas has quality of life, and therefore people want to move into urban areas because they get a job. Like my PM has already said that these urban areas, urbanization and urban areas are extremely elitist, and it's very hard for people who are underprivileged to access those benefits that they claim in the first place, right? If it's true, right, take it as if it's true, right, that what you're saying does happen, then status quo wouldn't see people moving back to Kelantan because they couldn't compete with people who have better education than them. But those things do happen in status quo, clearly, and it's not true, right? Their side also comes with an even worse harm, given that you give your entire savings to move to an urban area, right? But then you still missed out on opportunities due to competitions, right? You now live in slums because of this elitism that is very prevalent, and now you're still gonna have a bad quality of life. Might as well go back to your kampong and live in your own house that's probably not in a flat PPR anyways. I don't get why they never see that harm that comes on their side, right? What we have said, right, ecotourism, right? They never engage on how indigenous people, minority, or these developing countries overall can have a stable job in tourism. Like there's gonna be hotels, like eco hotels, like you see in Pahang National Park, where it's built properly and it's not damaging the environment. They also say on how white people is going to damage it even more. I've said it in my speech. There's more laws nowadays because of awareness that people don't go to these countries and ruin the environment. Your side literally ruins the environment entirely, right? And you cannot co-opt to this exclusive benefit that we have, is that we get to keep our environment, culture and identity, right? Because this culture and identity, once you lose it, it is extremely important to a certain individual, right? They never also engage on how colonialism can happen, right? Most developing countries are post-colonial anyways, so this white worshipping behavior is already ingrained in most people's mind. Neocolonialism is something that is highly likely to happen on your side of the world, right? Second question: who can protect the environment better? They never gave a counter mechanism on this, right? They never gave an alternative, never really engaged on this, right? Instead, their side comes with the harm, because standard of living can go down if the environment is ruined, right? Look at Beijing, China, where they have to wear masks all the time because of how bad the air is, right? You should have seen that, and they never give an alternative on how their side can improve on that. We have told you on our side, not only environment, that the development of the country is more sustainable because you're not rushing into things, right? You're not using whatever land and labor capital you have excessively, right? We provide sustainable use of resources. You can develop your country in the long run. At the same time, you can also keep your country's environment, in which they never ever tackled in their case. Therefore, I rest my case.
Okay, thank you. Wait for the closing ceremony. Yeah, awesome. Congratulations.